Could we agree that life is full of crossroads, right? Full of crossroads. When you maybe some years ago you meet this lovely young lady, your eyes fall on her, and then you say, "Oh," your heart starts to do one of these sort of things, and you get up the courage at one point. Later on, you say, "Would you marry me?" Is that a crossroads? Oh yeah, absolutely. When you sign your name on the dotted line of this wonderful thing called a mortgage, is that a crossroads? Oh yeah. Even when you go to the car dealership, which I've done one time in my entire lifetime, and you see that car that, ooh, wouldn't that be a nice car to have? And you think about, can I do it? And you sign your name on the line. Yeah, I'll have that. Is that a crossroads? Absolutely. I remember a film from a long time ago, Wizard of Oz. Dorothy comes walking up the road, and who does she meet but the Scarecrow? And she comes to remember? She comes to a crossroads. And there's the Scarecrow, and she says, "Oh dear, which way should I go? Should I go that way or should I go that way?" And the Scarecrow pipes up. He says, "Well, you could go that way, or you could go that way." Remember that? Yeah. And then things happen. The Scarecrow jumps off his perch as he does, and he starts singing. Don't you like when they start singing? And I know. He says, "I could while away the hours." Remember that bit? "Conferring with the flowers, consulting with the rain." You remember that? Good. Okay, we got a few there. One thing. "And my head, I'd be scratching." See, that's it. "While my thoughts are busy hatching, if I..."
Oh, yeah.
There we go. We got it. "I'd unravel every riddle, every individual, in trouble or in pain. With the thoughts you'd be thinking you could be another Lincoln if you..." That's it. Not it. I didn't mean to imply that no one here had a brain. But that was the Scarecrow, so he didn't have a brain. So he was trying to make this decision of where Dorothy should go, to the right or to the left. As a church, we've been nomads, wandering from place to place ever since day one, truth be told. And we've now come up to a situation, and we've come to crossroads. And undoubtedly, it's probably the biggest decision we would ever have made, or ever will be making, potentially. When we came into this space right here, it was a massive decision. We didn't have money, really, if you looked at the pounds and pence in the balance sheet, to really make it work. But there's this amazing thing called faith. God, is this what you want? And then there's the actions of, okay, if this is the sense of what you want, then we step out and do it. So today I want us to think about this in terms of this whole opportunity. And we want to challenge ourselves and think about this as we look into the book of Nehemiah, chapter 1. And Alpha's going to come and read. You're going to say that? You're going to stop there?
No, stop there.
That's fine. We can make that work. Verses 1 through 11. Go on.
The words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. In the month of Chislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men. And I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, "Those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire." When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the Lord of heaven. Then I said, "O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and obey his commands, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you, day and night, for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's house, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly towards you. We have not obeyed the commands, decrees and laws you gave your servant Moses. Remember the instructions you gave your servant Moses, saying, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. They are your servants and your people, whom you redeemed by your great strength and your mighty hand. O Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant, and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favour in the presence of this man. I was cupbearer to the king.
God, thank you for this portion of the Bible. And God, we ask for wisdom now and real understanding as we take a look at this and see how this might apply to our situation in 2019. And God, we just want to ask that you'd help me to step aside anything that's of Eric that would get in the way. God, that you would speak to us and would help us to be able to understand and be able to really apply this. In Jesus' name. Amen. There is a lot of history behind this, and we don't have time to really dive into all of it. Let me just quickly say this, that there was a time in history of Israel that they were exiled. They had to leave their homeland. They were taken to this area of the world for a number of reasons. But the idea is that they had settled for a period of time, but still they remembered home. Home is a nice word, isn't it? It's a nice word. And people ask me all the time, Eric, do you miss home? And a lot of ways, yeah. A lot of ways, yeah. Thankfully, because of you lot, we have felt that this is very much a new home. A new home. But for those Jews, they always thought about Israel. They thought about their homeland. And so can you imagine what it would have been like as, here is this chappie called Nehemiah, and as Nehemiah was serving as what was called a cupbearer was a very important job. Now, a bit of a dangerous job as well. His job was to stand beside the king, and if someone was to bring the king something to drink, the cupbearer's job was to test it first, because somebody could be looking to try to do the king in, and if there was a bit of something in there that would not be good, it would hit the cupbearer first before it hit the king. That was the whole idea behind the cupbearer. So Nehemiah had an incredibly important job, and as he was there, he was a Jew. Someone came up to him with these words. He said, I questioned them, and there in verse 1 through verse 3, I questioned them about the Jewish remnant who had survived the exile. There's the exile. Here's what they said in verse 3. They said, those who survived the exile and are back in the province, back in Israel, are in great trouble and distress. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. We don't understand that very much now, because we don't have a gate, a set of gates, and a wall around Doncaster, do we? In York, you do still have a city wall. What was the purpose of the wall? The purpose of the wall was for protection. And so this homeland that they loved so much, the news came back that the wall had been destroyed, it was broken down, there were no doors there to protect them from the enemies, and so Nehemiah's heart was broken because of the news that he heard. So first of all, in this journey, Nehemiah, first of all, that there was a need that was recognized. A need that was recognized. He saw that there was a need of the wall to be built back up. He saw that there was a need for those gates, those doors to be put back on. And his heart was affected so much, and we're going to come to that in just a second, that he took action in a very special way. So when I was thinking about that in our context, I asked myself this. I said, Eric, is there a need? when we're thinking about this whole thing with the church down there, are we operating in a way that's best for our church? And I think these are important questions to think. And I have some various conversations with people, and there are some who say, we're operating. We can do things. We do message church. We do all in. We have Sunday morning. We do all the different things that we do. So it is a good question. Is there a need? Is there a need? In connection with that question, maybe we should ask ourselves, are we content with what we're doing? Are we happy with what we're doing? Are we happy with where we are? Do we have a vision for anything beyond what we do here at Omskar? There's lots of situations all around the world, in Doncaster, I'm sure, and you know what, I think as a church, we do a lot. For the size of our group, we do a lot. And there's a lot to celebrate. Absolutely. But I think we need to ask ourselves, where are we at? Do we have a passion to be able to connect in to the village, or do we say, you know what, we're about maxed out on what we could do. So I really think we should be stopping here. Is that kind of where we're at? Or do we say, you know what, I think God has something more for us. We could take that here. So that's a question that we need to ask ourselves and think about where we're at. Do we have a vision? I was speaking to somebody else, and the phrase came out, you know what, just because there's struggles and battles that we're going to discover here, you know what, there's also an opportunity. There's an opportunity. And you'd say, Eric, is there an opportunity there down at that bigger space? Now, one of the things, a little exercise that I did, I actually took a map on the Google Maps, as you do, and did a little picture there, a little outline of our bit here, outline of our bit over there, and could you guess what the comparison was? Okay? For our little bit here, over there, it's about 5 to 6 times the size of what we have here. That's a challenge. With every challenge, there is an opportunity. With every opportunity, there is a challenge. So the question is, what are we up for? Do we say, you know, Eric, we have so many plates that we're trying to spin already. Does it really make sense to try and take on something like that? Do we have enough people who will roll their sleeves up and say, you know what? God has set us here for a purpose, and this has been great. But I'm really sensing God wanting us to take even the next step. If that's true, that's fantastic. If God's saying, no, we're at capacity, and this is about all that I've set you here to do, then that's fine too. The question is, what does God say? What's God say? I want to notice straight away what Nehemiah does. Okay? What does Nehemiah say? What does he do?
Pray.
In verse 4, I think it's incredibly important. The first thing Nehemiah did not do was run to Facebook. The first thing he did not do was get on the phone, bring all his mates around, saying, yeah, we need to set up something here to raise some money. He didn't do that. The first thing Nehemiah did, said in verse 4, is that when I heard these things, what did he do? He sat down, first of all. He didn't go out running somewhere. He didn't make himself crazy doing stuff. He sat down and he wept. So there was an emotional connection with what was going on. And for some days, he says, I mourned and I fasted and I prayed before the God of heaven. And then Allison had read the prayer, at least part of the prayer, that he had prayed. So seeking God was his very first priority. And that's why we've been saying, and I think we need to continue to do this, you know what? Nehemiah had emotion. And I know when we went down there on Sunday, I thought for sure people would have had half a dozen paintbrushes in their back pocket. Right, okay, here we go. Let's get this wall done. You know what? I can understand that. Kids are running all over the place, and God bless him, Leo said he had his mind on this, what we could do here. That's fantastic. Okay, that's fantastic. And the emotion is great. But here's the problem with emotions. They go up, and they go down. And they go up, and they go, who knows where they go from there. Okay? So emotions are good. God created us as emotional people, but let's copy what Nehemiah did. Straight away, he said, I'm going to make the seeking of God a priority in my life. Let's notice a couple bits really quickly. Verse 4, look what it says. When I heard these things, I sat down and I wept. And for some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. So I'm going to say that, first of all, his prayer was heartfelt. His heart was heartfelt. Now, his prayer was not, God, give us this wall. That was not the prayer. That was not the prayer. Secondly, in verses 6 and 7, let your ear be attentive and your hearts and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night. For your servants, the people of Israel, I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. So I think his prayer not only was heartfelt, but secondly, it was sincere. It was sincere. And that's why I want us to challenge each other during these next 3 weeks or so to have sincere prayer. Because first of all, this is not Eric's project. God forbid this is not Eric's project. Okay? First of all, it's God's project. Secondly, it is our project. And I guess Eric will slot in there at some point down there. But please, let's first of all have heartfelt prayer, sincere prayer. God, would you guide us? Would you show us what you want? And that's why I thought Doreen's concept was really good. As you're walking around the village, you make your way down there, you're going to the market, you're going to the post office, you'll pass right by it. It could be something like, God, would you really impress on my heart what? It could be nothing more than that, and that's fine. The idea is that keeping it in our minds and in our hearts about what God's leading or about what God's doing. Thirdly, verse 11. Verse 11. What it says in verse 11. It says, Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant and the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today in granting him favor in the presence of this man. Who is this man do you think he's on about? The king. The king. So Nehemiah's prayer is specific. Specific. And I think this is key as well. So when we think about this, there have to be at least 2 miraculous things happening. Number one, miraculous thing. If they come out and say, okay, we're going to put this thing up for sale, it'll be $175 grand. I don't know about you, but I don't have $175 grand in my checkbook. We don't have $175 grand in the church's checkbook for that matter. So this has to come from somewhere, and I don't know where. God's going to have to provide in an incredibly miraculous way, in a way that I don't understand at this point. Number 2, there needs a fair amount of refurb stuff. So God's going to have to provide, again, some miraculous way to be able to make it so that all the things can happen there that need to happen. I know there's a whole lot of talk, a whole lot of things that to try and explain that. Now we have to quickly move on. The project was on by the group. Chapter 2, verse 17 and 18 says this. So Nehemiah goes to the king. He says, King, my homeland is in a right fix. The walls of the city are broken down. The gates are burned with fire. And I really would like to go back. Now the king, now wait a minute, this is the king right now. Okay, the king. And Nehemiah was a slave, a Jew, a nothing. But God's worked in the heart of the king. So here's the thing that's important about that. Number one, Nehemiah prayed, but he also took action. He went up to the king and said, King, this is what has got on my heart. Now, we don't have time to get into it, but here's the exciting thing. You know, the king said, okay, Nehemiah, when are you going to come back? He kind of set a time. I think we'll be able to get this done. We'll come back at this time. And then the king said this. He said, all right, I'll provide for you the wood for the timbers, and I'll give you protection as you go through the other countries. Wow, isn't that exciting? Isn't that amazing? So not only can, as Nehemiah prayed, and he got the green light from God, God provided everything that Nehemiah did in order to physically get that building project done. That is exciting. That is exciting. But in chapter 2, as Nehemiah went through there, arrived, Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 17 and 18 says this. Then I said to them, talking about some of the other Jews that were with him, verse 17, I said to them, you see the trouble we're in. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come let us. Come let who? Us. He didn't say, come let me rebuild the walls. Come let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. And as I told them about the gracious hand of God on me and what the king had said, they replied, all together, let's read it, let us start rebuilding. So they began this good work. So the project was owned by the group. Number one, they understood the project. They understood the project. Hey, the wall is broken down. Let's build the wall. Easy to understand. Ours may be not so quite easy to understand, but they also, number two, understood the reason for building. Because the wall was broken down, they were in disgrace, they were under potential attack from the enemy. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the reason for us having an interest down there? Is it an opportunity? And here's what it comes. And I've been thinking about this a long time. And I know maybe some of the things I say don't make a lot of sense. I've been rumbling around things in my own mind, battling back and forth, yes and no. And in my mind, the biggest question we have to answer: which situation will produce the most for the gospel? Does that make sense? Which will produce the most? Because here's the danger. The danger is this. I love a little term, the tail wagging the dog. And the idea is, if we get down there and it's all about the building, then we've got it wrong. At the end of the day, church is about the people. If you look in the Bible, the old guys, they didn't have a building. They met in people's homes. This idea of church buildings didn't come in until hundreds of years later. Now, I'm not against church buildings. I like this. If you remember, now, Allie was probably the one who was only in the early days. In the early days, back at the welfare, at the learning center, we had all the stuff piled into our house. On a Sunday morning, we'd throw it all in this big people carrier thing about the size of Lee and Joanne's. Throw it in there, run the 200 meters down to the learning center, pile it all out, set it all up, hopefully it'll all work, and then you do your thing, and then what happens? You take it all apart, you put it all back in the boxes and crates, you throw it into the car, you drive the 200 meters back to the house, and then what do? You take it out of the car, you throw it into the house, hoping that nothing breaks, and you do that Sunday after Sunday. That was a hassle. I love the fact that the only thing I got to do in here is set up chairs and click, and it's on. That's amazing. Love that. Love that. But it's not about doing. But there's an opportunity. Do we have enough people here who are passionate to get their sleeves rolled up, say, you know what, I want to be a part of what God's doing over here. Right? I tell you what, I think it could be incredibly exciting. But do we have enough people? Are we as a group saying, yes, I want to do what they say. Let us start building. Part of what we're going to challenge each other with this whole thing is that are we willing to not just give some time and energy? You're not going to like this, but probably not. Are we willing to dig our hands in our pockets a bit? Now, Eric, wait a minute, I understand that. So here's the thought. Are we willing to give sacrificially? If we're asking everyone else around the world to give for this, are we willing to give? Eric, what do you mean? What would we think sacrificial giving could look like? What does that look like? What do you think that means? What does sacrifice mean? Giving some. Okay. Now, if you talk to Doreen, she was part of a church in Retford. If you talk to her, when they went through this, there were people who had taken second mortgages out on their houses. If I remember, what you told me? They took money out of their house to throw into the coffers so they could do this. I'm thinking, Here's what I'm talking. In my mind, I'm thinking a lot about this. In my mind, sacrificial giving is this. I mean, the requirements are your house, your utilities, all the things that you have to do to live. And then, most of us will have a discretionary chunk, right? There's the fun bits. So for you, it could be, you know what? I'm not going to do takeout this week. But I'm going to take that £12.89 and I'm going to sacrifice that pleasurable bit. Maybe not so pleasurable for the sake of it. I'm going to take that bit and I'm going to sacrifice that bit of pleasure and dedicate that to God. Now I guarantee you that the idea of sacrificial giving will be different for every one of us. It's going to be different. I'd love to go to the story of the widow in the Bible. Here's this widow who had 2 pennies. Remember that? Yeah. Here was, they were in the temple. Here are all these guys, all the ones with all stuff and big bags of gold. They walk in there and plunk. Oh, look at me! Look what I've given. And here it is, this little lady who had 2 pennies, and she plink, plink, tinkle, tinkle. Now, from a financial perspective, who gave the most? No question. Jesus said to his helpers, "What's happening over there? Who gave the most?" I said, "I'll tell you this. That little lady who had very, very little, she gave far more. She gave far more. So this is not about pounds and pence. This is about hearts." I know, and I think probably the number of times that we've spoken about money here at RCBC, I can count on one hand. I know it's a very sensitive subject. I understand that. I know that. But my thing is this, that if we are not emotionally, workily, if we're not connected with this on multiple levels, then I don't want to do it. Okay? Does that make sense? I'm not trying to be mean at all. And this would be Eric giving sacrificially too. This is not about, remember the old thing, if you point a finger, what happens? You got 3 fingers pointing back at you. Remember all that? So this is not about you lot, this is about Eric as well. Am I willing to say, okay, right, okay, I was going to buy this telly or do this, but you know what, I'm going to keep back and maybe do the telly next year and take half of that and get, I don't know what it means to you. I don't know. But here's part of the prayer. The prayer is this. Am I willing? Not just to say, oh, let's do it, but let's put some substance to the let's do it. verse 19, and we're going to finish this up. However, we need to remember something. Wouldn't it be great if we go do this and woohoo, okay? Warning, okay? Big red lights coming on if I have red lights. Ready? Here we go. Chapter 2, verses 19. Verse 19. Problems will come. Okay, everyone say this together on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Problems will come. Eric, what do you mean? Well, this is God's work. Oh, I mean, God's just going to put a big wall of protection around everything. And I promise you, problems will come. Okay. Chapter 2, verse 19. But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, what did they do? They mocked and ridiculed. What is this you're doing, they asked. Are you rebelling against the king? Now, one thing that is, we can understand that problems can come from expected places. Now, we don't know exactly why they had a problem with it, but sure enough, there was someone who said, "You lot, what do you think you're doing? You have no right to be here. Get out of here." That's exactly what these three were saying to these Jews. Problems from that's the easy one. That's the easy one. Problems from expected places. However, the difficult one is problems from unexpected places. In chapter 3. Chapter 3 is an amazing chapter, and I promise we'll bring this to a close. Chapter 3 is an amazing chapter because it goes through this family did this, and this thing where they got stuck in, and they built this part of the wall, and this family did this gate, and it was just all going all around. You thought, man, what a fantastic thing. But then you come to chapter 3 and verse 5. Look what it says. The next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. Oi! Isn't that frustrating? Why you got all the team on board and they're all pulling in the same direction, and there's he's lot over here. Nope, not me. Don't know exactly why. The reality is that we as a church family, we have to be very, very careful. I know. Anything like this, anything that you attempt to do, anything for God, if this is what God is leading, anything you attempt for God, the enemy, who is real, by the way, Satan doesn't have little horns and tail, okay, red cape and all that sort of thing. The enemy will try to do all sorts to throw a spanner in the works. You can mark the words. I guarantee you. I guarantee you. And that's the difficult bit. When the problems come from the expected places. Although 99%, if you look down through chapter 3, although 99% got stuck in, they rolled their sleeves up, the reality is problems are going to happen from all different directions, and we just continually have to remind ourselves, if God is leading us in this direction, then God is the one. Last but not least, we're done. I do apologize for the time. Chapter 2 and verse 20, look what it says. Verse 19 was about the Sanballat and Tobiah and Gershom said, "Oh, what are you all doing? You ought to get out of here. You're rebelling against the king." Verse 20. I answered them by saying, the God of heaven is the one who's going to give us success. We, as servant, will start rebuilding, but as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic rights to it. So the reality is this, and we have to hold on to this, that confidence is in the main contractor. Who is? Who is? God. Thank you. So if God is saying yes, if things are lining up, then we go for it. Problems are going to happen. Okay. We have to be cautious. We hold together as a family. Okay? This is not about the building. This is about our family. I think, just looking, as a church, looking what the community are saying, I think it could be an incredible opportunity. But this is not your decision. What is God speaking to you about? Are we emotionally connected? Physically connected? Are we willing to sacrifice? God, thank you for today. And Father, we just want to leave this and put this into your hands. God, we want to thank you for what you're laying before us. And God, and I know each one of us may have different thoughts about this, but God, we want to ask that you would help us, God, to really think about these important questions. God, is this what you want? And am I willing to invest myself into this? And Lord, I pray that you would just speak to each person here today. And God, we want to know what you want. And Father, then we need to ask ourselves a question. Am I willing to parrot the words that we read there in Nehemiah? When they said, let us start the rebuilding of the wall. I think that's a key element as well. And God, we want to just bring this to you, ask for your strength, and for you to speak to us. Thank you, God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you all. Thank you so much for being here.